Have you ever noticed how the price of your favorite candy bar seems to go up over time, or how the cost of a gallon of milk seems to creep higher and higher? That, my friends, is inflation in action. Simply put, inflation is a general increase in the prices of goods and services over time. When prices go up, it means that your hard-earned dollars don't stretch as far as they used to. You're essentially losing purchasing power because you need more money to buy the same amount of stuff. Think of it like this. If a loaf of bread cost $2 last year and now costs $2.50, you're experiencing inflation. Your dollar just doesn't buy as much bread as it used to. Inflation is a fact of life in most modern economies. It's important to understand how it works and what causes it so you can protect your savings and make informed financial decisions. In the following sections, we'll delve deeper into the causes and consequences of inflation, using real-life examples to illustrate its impact on our daily lives. Imagine you have a $100 bill tucked away in a safe place. You might think that money will always be worth $100, but with inflation, that's not necessarily true. Over time, as prices rise, the purchasing power of that $100 bill slowly erodes. Let's say you could buy 100 candy bars with that $100 bill today. Now, fast forward a few years and imagine inflation has caused the price of candy bars to double. Suddenly, your $100 bill only buys you 50 candy bars. The value of your money has decreased, even though you still have the same $100 bill. This shrinking value of money is why it's crucial to consider inflation when saving and investing. If your money isn't growing at a rate that outpaces inflation, you're actually losing purchasing power over time. One of the main culprits behind inflation is something called demand pull inflation. This happens when there's too much money chasing too few goods. Think of it like a popular toy during the holiday season. If everyone wants the toy and there aren't enough to go around, the price will skyrocket. Let's say the government decides to print a lot of extra money and inject it into the economy. People have more money in their pockets, so they're eager to spend. But if there aren't enough goods and services to meet this increased demand, businesses will raise their prices. This increased demand, coupled with limited supply, pulls prices upward, leading to inflation. Demand pull inflation can also be driven by factors like increased consumer confidence, low interest rates that encourage borrowing and spending, or even government spending programs that put more money into people's hands. Now let's talk about another type of inflation called cost-push inflation. This occurs when the costs of production increase, forcing businesses to raise their prices to maintain their profit margins. Imagine there's a sudden shortage of oil, a key ingredient in many products. This shortage drives up the price of oil, which in turn increases the cost of manufacturing everything from gasoline to plastic. Businesses then have to raise their prices to cover these increased production costs, leading to inflation. Cost-push inflation can also be triggered by things like rising wages, increased taxes on businesses, or natural disasters that disrupt supply chains. Section 5. The money printing press, how money supply fuels inflation. Remember that example of the government printing too much money? That's a key factor in what's known as monetary inflation. When the money supply grows faster than the economy's ability to produce goods and services, it can lead to inflation. Think of it like this. If there are more dollars in circulation but the same amount of goods and services available, each dollar becomes worth less. It's like diluting a glass of juice with too much water. The flavor becomes weaker. The 2007 to 2008 financial crisis provides a stark example of how excessive money creation can fuel inflation. To combat the crisis, central banks around the world, including the Federal Reserve in the United States, injected trillions of dollars into the financial system. While this helped avert a complete economic collapse, it also increased the money supply, contributing to inflationary pressures in the years that followed. Section 6. The vicious cycle. Unraveling the wage price spiral. Inflation can sometimes set off a chain reaction known as the wage price spiral. Here's how it works. As prices rise, workers demand higher wages to keep up with the increasing cost of living. Businesses, in turn, raise their prices to cover these higher labor costs. This leads to further inflation, prompting workers to demand even higher wages. and so on. It's a vicious cycle that can be difficult to break. Imagine a game of hot potato where the potato represents inflation. As prices and wages continue to rise, the hot potato gets passed back and forth with no one wanting to be left holding it when the music stops. The wage price spiral can lead to a situation where inflation becomes embedded in the economy, making it much harder to control. Section 7. Fixed income, shrinking value, inflation's impact on retirees and savers. Inflation can be particularly tough on people living on fixed incomes, such as retirees or those receiving disability benefits. Why? Because their income stays the same while the cost of goods and services continues to rise. Imagine you're retired and living on a fixed pension of $2,000 per month. If inflation is at 3%, it means that the goods and services you buy will cost 3% more this year than they did last year. Your $2,000 pension will buy you 3% less, effectively reducing your purchasing power. This is why it's crucial for retirees and those approaching retirement to factor inflation into their financial planning. They need to ensure their savings and investments are growing at a rate that outpaces inflation to maintain their standard of living. Section 8. The housing bubble, a real-life example of inflation's destructive power. The housing bubble of the mid-2000s provides a stark illustration of how inflation can contribute to asset bubbles and financial instability. During this period, low interest rates and lax lending standards fueled a surge in demand for homes. As more people entered the housing market, home prices soared. This rapid price appreciation created a speculative frenzy, with investors buying up properties not to live in, but to flip for a quick profit. The problem was that these inflated prices were not sustainable. When the bubble burst in 2007, millions of homeowners found themselves underwater on their mortgages, owing more than their homes were worth. The resulting wave of foreclosures triggered a global financial crisis. The housing bubble highlights the importance of recognizing and addressing asset bubbles early on to prevent widespread economic damage. Section 9. Riding the stock market roller coaster, inflation and asset bubbles. Inflation can also play a role in the formation of stock market bubbles. When inflation is high, investors often look for assets that can outpace the rising cost of living. This can lead to a surge in demand for stocks, driving up prices beyond what's justified by the underlying fundamentals of the companies. Think of it like a game of musical chairs. Investors are rushing to find a seat, a good investment, before the music stops. Inflation erodes their purchasing power. This can create a self-fulfilling prophecy, where rising stock prices fuel further demand, leading to a bubble. However, like all bubbles, stock market bubbles eventually burst. When this happens, stock prices can plummet rapidly, leaving investors who bought in at inflated prices with significant losses. Section 10. Taming the inflation beast, why economic stability matters. Managing inflation is crucial for maintaining economic stability. When inflation is low and predictable, businesses can plan for the future. Investors can make informed decisions, and consumers can be confident that their hard-earned money will hold its value. Central banks play a vital role in controlling inflation. They use tools like interest rates and money supply management to keep inflation in check. Governments can also contribute by pursuing responsible fiscal policies that avoid excessive spending and debt. By working together, policymakers and central bankers can help to tame the inflation beast, creating an environment where economies can thrive and individuals can prosper. Remember, understanding inflation is the first step toward protecting your financial well-being.
Commit your way to the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. Psalm 37 verse 5. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Philippians 4 verse 13.